So, guys, once again, another round of crazy Russia news. We'll start with Russia's Bashkortostan, the Ufa region. It's about 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine, where locals are unsurprisingly surprised that Ukrainian drones are 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine and en route to arguably Russia's most valuable energy asset, representing about 9% of Russia's overall refining capacity. It's well, I'll read you what I wrote. Ukraine no longer messing around, now hitting the very core of Russia's refining industry. 1,400 kilometers from Ukraine in Russia's Ufa in Bashkortostan. This complex consists of 3 refineries, making it number 1 in terms of capacity in all Russia. To give you an idea of where this is, I calculated that it's essentially the same distance from Ukraine to Geneva as it is from Ukraine to Bashkortostan. And this is the second time that we've hit this, but today, it seems, from the damage, it appears that we're a little more successful today. But I mean, you have to give the Ukrainian armed forces credit here, because this is the distances are just becoming ridiculous. And what's more ridiculous is the fact that that Russia has really no air defenses in that entire distance. I mean, like, look at the distance traveled here, and in all that time, there's no air defense. I mean, couldn't they at least maybe stack them around the refineries? Maybe 2 anti-aircraft units per refinery. I mean, I know Putin's palaces and Moscow definitely have, and Ukraine definitely has a lot more air defenses than the core of the Russian economy. It doesn't seem like seems like questionable logic. And here's some of the damage. You're no longer allowed. It's Russian law now. You're not allowed to film, take photos, or post them to social media. Any damage to Russian oil infrastructure. And these are just locals lamenting the strikes. Ukraine's security service carried out another long-range strike, this time hitting the Bashneft Ufa oil refining complex about 1,400 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The Ufa complex is Russia's largest refining hub, made up of 3 plants, Novoil, UNPZ, and Ufa Neftekhim, with a combined throughput of roughly 23.5 million tons per year, slightly ahead of Omsk, long regarded as the country's biggest single refinery. So this is the majority. If there's any particular place that Ukraine can hit, if they can hit this with a regularity, this is the core. This was the core of the Russian economy, this particular little area in Bashkortostan. It is one of the Kremlin's most important fuel centers, supplying the Russian army with gasoline, diesel, and lubricants. The attack reportedly ignited fires near the Ilau AVT-6 crude distillation unit, halting part of the facility's operations. Each successful strike on such a deep rear infrastructure further weakens Russia's logistics and exposes the limits of its air defense networks. What air defense networks? I mean, it's 1,400 kilometers, and the Russians couldn't figure out how to shoot this thing down, or these things. It was multiple strikes, actually, in this entire distance. It's just getting crazy, right? I mean, what is Russia's plan on this? Well, probably the same plan that they have for their military. Here's some videos from this morning, in which the second military of the world, in quotes, I guess the Laurel and Hardy of global militaries, the Dumb and Dumber of global militaries, I don't know how else to put it, the Keystone Cops of global militaries, here just yesterday posting and boasting about their new electronic warfare capabilities, some brand new shiny capabilities they've recently come across. And he's basically saying that we will shoot down everything now. This is in the Sumy direction. This is the northeast of Ukraine, a very small area by the border that the Russians have managed to control. And then the very next day, from the same poster, those very same units, these very same electronic warfare units are now burning with a panicked Russian soldier. The same little tripod unit, same truck, same sign. It didn't even move. It's in the same place. Yeah. Russian military, I don't know, providing the content that we so desperately need in these times of war. Yeah, wow. It's just, it's crazier and crazier. Russian military salaries being abruptly cut by huge margins, while Russian leadership lobbies North Korea for more soldiers and plans to bring in 25,000 Cubans. This is from Ukraine's Stratcom. Moscow's war efforts continue to resemble everything we expect from Russia: mismanagement and chaos, and we are here for it. And they're basically, this is from Russian Telegram, and what the Russian government, the federal government, is now forcing the regions to pay the bonuses for all these contract soldiers, which is insane because the regions are, well, several of them are already headed into bankruptcy, except for the ones, I mean, especially for the ones that are heavily reliant on, say, coal or any other commodities that have been hit so hard in terms of sanctions, not being able to export them to raise cash on the foreign market, and the price of coal is down 48% just in the past year. So regions like the Kuzbas region, for example, straddling them with even more expenses is. And here's a post from my friend, neighbor, and colleague Sergey. More detail on this story. He calculated it in terms of percentages. A very interesting development. Russian authorities severely reduce welcome payments for recruits in occupied Tatarstan. Welcome bonus was reduced by 89%. From approximately 38,000 to 4,000. In Russian-occupied Bashkortostan, the bonus was reduced from 20K to 12K earlier. So, and then he elaborated further. Before, Russian authorities tried to artificially reduce payments, for example, setting a benchmark of 3 months service before full payment, with life expectancy for many soldiers of only several days in combat, but were afraid to openly reduce the magic numbers or the welcome payment. And so the Russian military is now, it looks like the long-term plan here is to bring in Cubans, North Koreans, and whoever they can scoop out of the African nations and pour them in front of Ukrainian artillery, which is, as far as a long-term plan, it's exactly what we would expect from Russia. Further elaborating on Russian incompetence, Russians never learn. At its peak, the USSR was 14% of global GDP, but today, Moscow's aspiring USSR 2.0 only represents 1.8% of global GDP. Corruption, massive expenditures on military, and low oil prices collapsed the USSR, and they will now collapse what's left of the USSR. And this is just tying it all together. I mean, you have the perfect storm. As yesterday, I spoke about this in a video. I mean, the oil prices are absolutely collapsing in response to the Middle East peace, and and the slowing of the global economy. There's lots of factors at play here, but peace is not in Russia's best interest. They need war, they need chaos, they need instability, especially among their enemies, the West civilized world. And in the vein of repeatedly doing the same thing over and over again, repeatedly, despite the well-known consequences, I'll read you what I wrote here. We have to love how the Russians continue making the same mistakes repeatedly throughout decades of stunning incompetence, adding an arms race to the already unaffordable foreign invasions amidst collapsing oil prices. Here we go. And so this is just more. So, Putin has an unaffordable war. The economy, the domestic economy is absolutely collapsing, and he wants to now add an arms race. If you remember in the 1980s, this is the soup. This is the recipe. This is how you collapse what's left of Putin's fledgling USSR 2.0 project. Putin announced the start of a nuclear arms race and promised to unveil a new wonder weapon. Yes. Yeah, it's just, guys, I don't know. It's so easy to see where all this is going, and thank God it's brave Ukrainians making it happen. Putin reminds the Russian-occupied, so these two speeches were taken, within hours of each other. Well, they want us to think that. And, look at the makeup that they caked on Putin in this. It's just, he's like this ghoul that's just sort of kept alive with I don't know, injections. Putin reminds the Russian-occupied regions of Ukraine how wonderful it is to be part of his fledgling USSR 2.0. After 11 years of brutal Russian occupation and decay that's left residents without water or electricity, they surely need it. And this is basically Putin just is in a speech yesterday congratulating the areas of Ukraine that Russia has managed to occupy and reminding them how awesome it is to be part of the fledgling USSR 2.0, despite the open hellscape that it is, and increasingly so. And he just goes through an absolute verbal diarrhea spiel of Russian nonsense. You know, and anyone that's been to, I mean, you know what the majority of apartment buildings across the entirety of the Donetsk region now have neither water or electricity, and people are on the edge of survival, and winter is now approaching, and it's going to be humanitarian catastrophe. And this is 11 years under Russian occupation. This has nothing to do with Ukraine. This is Russian incompetence. Because Russia doesn't care. They don't care about anything that happens above the ground beyond looting it. And when they first moved in there, all the local business leaders, Donetsk City, there's a really good documentary called Donbass you can see, made just about 2 years after the initial occupation of in 2014. And Russians basically went in and took anyone that had a restaurant or money of any kind. Even that was the first wave. Then it got down to if you even had a car, and it went further and further and further until most people just fled, the ones that weren't killed. Local business owners, whatever, they just called you to the local courthouse, and they kept you in the basement, and they would torture you, and they would extract all of your assets. They had a notary right there. That's how assets change hands in Ukraine and Russia. It's just basically a notarial process. They had a notary there just to sign over, you know, restaurants, businesses, bank accounts. You had to call. I mean, there's clips in this documentary where local business owners are in this basement and they're just frantically calling all the relatives. Look, I need the money right now. Just send whatever you can. I need the access code for this bank account, that. Because, they were kidnapping relatives, all the stuff you'd see, that you would see, like in any Russian mafia movie. It's a 100% real. And that's what they do in every area of Ukraine that Russians have managed to occupy. So this bullshit about, so when you see some horse shit out of Putin like this, just understand it for what it is. And further on the propaganda front, North Korea is now held up by Russian cash. So when North Korea does collapse, it's going to be fully on China. They're building, theme parks now for propaganda purposes. And the rest is basically missiles factories and artillery. That's basically what North Korea has become, a massive weapons factory. And I'll just read you what Nexter wrote here. So yesterday, and I think the previous 3 days, a series of Russian delegations arrived in North Korea, along with some Vietnamese, I believe. It's a full propaganda show being held up all with Russian money at this point. North Korea marked the 80th anniversary of its ruling party with a massive military parade in Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un personally oversaw the event and unveiled the new Hwang-Song 20 intercontinental ballistic missile, the most powerful weapon in North Korea's arsenal. And as a quick reminder, it was Russia during the 1960s that helped North Korea get nuclear weapons from the start. They aided in everything from the drawing board. That was a Russian operation. In his speech, the dictator spoke of the flawless path of the party and vowed to build a socialist paradise. Delegations from China, Russia, and Vietnam attended the celebration. This is just propaganda purposes. The Russian delegation included Dmitry Medvedev, and the event featured a performance by pro-war singer Shaman. That's one of the big Russian pop guys that Putin sends out just to legitimize the regime, who now visits North Korea as if it were a second home. And yeah, this is like the 5th video I've seen of this guy being in North Korea. Let me go ahead and turn this down in case the North Koreans have copyrighted any of this, what they call music. Yeah, and it's just basically a military parade, sort of like Trump tried to organize in Washington, D.C. for his birthday. Don't give me all the Trump hate in the comments. I don't hear it enough. Some people call me pro-Trump. Others are calling me, I just, I don't need it, guys. Let me go ahead and turn this off because it's probably also copyrighted. North Korean hellscape. But you understand that all of this collapses the moment that Russia collapses. It will be dominoes. And it's going to be solely up to China to keep this whole place flowing. And what will they want in exchange? This is going to be a Chinese colony. There's some further propaganda charades. Oh, God. And there he is. There he is, the North Korean dude. I just imagine what that guy must smell like. I mean, he's just a beast. Surrounded by the harem. What a waste of humanity. The fact that this is even allowed to exist. And there's a series of Russians. And one of the newest additions to Putin's propaganda apparatus, this U.S. congressman now fills her timeline with constant praise of the Russian dictatorship. And this, I won't speculate on how Russia is paying her, but, there's obviously something going on here. Every once in a while, you get these U.S. influencers or politicians that just pop up, and all of a sudden, they know where Moldova is, and they want to support the Kremlin-backed political party, or all of a sudden they're saying things like Khrushchev's mistake, or these old verbatim talking points. Anyway, this woman is a representative in the U.S. House of Representatives, and she now spends like half of her Twitter timeline is just promoting Russian narratives and praising Putin, which she did again yesterday. Look at the bottom line there. Thank you, Kremlin, Russia, for backing POTUS. This would be, sort of like a one-off, but it's not. She's doing this all the time. She's getting actually absolutely roasted on Twitter now because it's become so ridiculously obvious that there's some sort of quid pro quo. But just to show you that there is some historic precedent for this, that it's not, crazy. I can't believe the U.S. House of Representatives has been bought by the members of the U.S. House of Representatives have been purchased by the Russian government. There is absolute precedent for this. If you know anything about the lead up to World War II, I just pulled up an article just to legitimize sort of what I'm saying. I'm not just making these things up. There's a Wikipedia entry. There was a U.S. law made. People went to jail. All these things I'm about to tell you really happened. In the run-up to World War II, the Nazis were running a massive propaganda effort out of the German embassy there in Washington, D.C., and were giving senators and congressmen verbatim speeches to read on the floors of the U.S. Congress, both the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. None of the politicians went to jail, but the guy that ran the whole operation, he did go to jail, but only after like 2 years. His name was George Sylvester Vierek. There's a whole Wikipedia all about him. He went to prison for this. And he was doing exactly what several members of Congress and senators and U.S. paid influencers are now doing and have been doing for a number of years. I'll read you a bit of this. I mean, I just want you to understand that there's historical precedent for this. I mean, for us, to dismiss it, like when I'm in the U.S. and I meet people like in airports or wherever, and I tell them some of these things. I mean, I'll say, look, just Google it for yourself. A lot of times people are just in denial. They don't believe that it's happening, and it's 100% happening. Russia is funneling major cash to all sorts of influence operations, including the U.S. political class. Vierek launched a scheme in which he paid members of U.S. Congress to take propaganda from the Hitler government. He'd literally get it from the German embassy and deliver it in Congress in floor speeches. Then he'd use their offices, franking privileges, to get thousands, in some cases millions, of reprints of this Nazi propaganda. So he was printing the Nazi propaganda in the offices of the U.S. House of the U.S. House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, printing Nazi propaganda. It's crazy. This is in 1940, right? Is when this began. It ran until 1941. He would mail it out at taxpayer expense all over the United States. The key members of Congress working with him in this scheme were Senator Ernest Lundgren, Hamilton Fish, and Jacob Thurkinson. But there were many others as well. And there was a Senate inquiry, and all this stuff happened. He was indicted. The politicians weren't. And that's the thing, is the way the U.S. laws are structured. The people that are taking Russian money right now, they are somewhat above the law. And it would be good if that would change. But it's not going to be until Russia is designated, is actually designated a state sponsor of terror, that I think the U.S. will finally get serious. And some more good news, some good news on the front here. Russian military bloggers this morning report the loss of one of their Russian Ka-52 Alligator helicopters. Awaiting good news. That's from Ukraine's Stratcom. This is from one of the Russian accounts that we don't really need to name, but that is usually legitimate in anytime any aircraft goes down. He always puts out this sort of brotherly lamentation. Anyway, those attack helicopters at the beginning of the war, Russia apparently had from 90 to 100 of these, and as of a year ago, had around 35 of them. And so losing one of these, or about $16 million for one of these things. They're not making them anymore, and it's good news. And on the military front, we've got this from Vlad over at Special Kherson Cat. After a long pause, Russia is again sending big armored columns into attack. A mass assault with 35 tanks. Don't worry, guys, this has a happy ending. And AFVs on Ukrainian positions took place in the area of responsibility of Azov First Corps. Anyway, we can go into the details here. Basically, the Russians launched a massive attack, and it came in several waves. And this is over the course of the past 3 days. Russians were building up forces, and the people that I know that know these things, were telling me for the past couple months that the Russians are really building up forces in a certain direction as a big gamble. And if it failed, it would be a very big deal propaganda-wise. And that's what we're seeing take place right now. Results of Ukraine's defense. Personnel, 107 Russians, KIA, 51 wounded in action. Vehicles destroyed, damaged, one armored recovery vehicle, 3 tanks, 16 AFVs, plus 41 motorcycles, and 2 light vehicles. There's probably several of these Chinese golf carts as well. The assault came in several waves from multiple directions. Motorcycle groups came first, then tank AFV columns with infantry, thanks to pre-laid minefields. Ukraine has everything. I've heard the numbers, and I don't know if I can really say them on a public forum like this, but there's some areas of Ukraine that have kilometers upon kilometers to where you couldn't walk more than 10 meters in any direction without hitting a mine. Russia managed to land 13 infantry. Russia was forced to reroute, lost orientation, abandoned vehicles, and dropped infantry in unplanned areas. I isolated sort of the last part of this video where I don't think there's anything too graphic, and you can just see the initial columns rolling in. Go ahead and turn off this audio. Yeah, and it's just it was a massive assault, and I don't know why they think they can get away with this. It's just mines upon mines for kilometers upon kilometers. I just wanted to end on that good news, and yeah, that's it for today. All right, have a good one.